Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Bordage of Partnerships for Authentic Learning and Leadership, and I'm here to introduce the activity I'm calling a Walk of What If Protocol. It comes from this text by Rob Hopkins. The book is From What Is to What If, Unleashing the Power of Imagination to Create the Future We Want. Dr. Hopkins is the co-founder of a nonprofit charity based in the UK called Transition Town, and it seeks to make change at the community level in regards to the environmental practices of a community to create change in the environmental situation and to support change in that effort to really support the planet. So he does a lot of work to mobilize communities, and he has many TED Talks. He's delivered his speeches and work and his way of thinking all over the world. He is a global environmentalist, and I have adapted some of his thinking for our own purposes in education. I call it the Walk of What If. It's a 3-step protocol, again, based on some of his ideas with enacting change at the community level. And he uses a few rules, and I've adapted those for us. So our rules in this protocol or activity are to not think about the constraints. At least for now, we're going to really lean into our creativity and imagination. And we're going to think big. So the goal here is to develop that idea that you are thinking about for your service learning projects, to add detail, to add different kinds of ways of thinking to the experience to help you flesh out that service learning project that ultimately you'll implement, and before that even complete the service learning plan for Serve Ohio. So that's the introduction. There are 3 steps. I'm going to introduce those steps relatively quickly. Typically, when I'm in person with teachers, we do this step by step and take several minutes. You might note these as I introduce them to you on a Post-it or your note or in a journal, and come back to it. And if you take some time, I know from experience that teachers tend to generate a lot of ideas with this protocol. So step 1, write a what if statement. You'll see a few examples of those on the next slide. Step 2, imagine what happens and describe it. Sketch it, create a concept map, organize it in a way that makes sense for you. How does this idea in your what if statement play out? For example, that's my step 2 I just showed there on the screen. I was writing about a professional learning experience, and my way of describing it would be to list things. I'm a lister, and I asked myself a lot of questions and generated more ideas from that brainstorm. So recap, step 1, write a what if statement. What if I or we, if you're working on a team or with your students, did this kind of service? Maybe you think of a form of service or a community partner or somebody that you're thinking about in the school community, really school, local, global, wherever it is you want to situate service learning. What would you do to support or bring attention to a need or help others? And why are you doing that? Do you want students to engage mostly in civic participation or mostly in direct service, that form of service learning that might get students out into the community, and other reasons certainly. So step 1 and 2, take a few minutes and do that. Make yourself a note. You can always rewind this. Here are some examples of what if statements. What if you are a grade pre-K through 2nd grade teacher, student teams planned the morning meeting for another class for each Friday, so their voices are amplified and they're serving their fellow students in the next class. Grades 4 through 12 example. What if I, a teacher, planned an entry event? It's that getting back to that service learning model with real stories and people from the community so that the unit has a purpose beyond the standard and is serving the citizens of the community. So using real stories from people to create some sort of, not sure yet with that one, this is just an entry event, but it might lead to indirect service or awareness or advocacy, starting with that. This one's for any grade. What if I, the teacher, did an activity with students that gathered concerns and worries at the school? There's a strategy out there I remember called Magic Wand. If you could wave a magic wand, what change would you make? And this generates a service learning project and could do so at the school if you asked a class that about their school setting. And finally, grade 8-12, what if my students partnered with an employer with lots of Spanish speakers? Maybe I'm a world language teacher, to inspire an authentic audience and to create PSAs to recognize the holidays that the Spanish speakers at the employer celebrate. So a service to a culture, a community, and possibly a business partner. And that's much more detailed than the what if statement that I read just before. So really trying to show that any what if statement, taking your idea and putting it down on paper, asking yourself that, okay, big and broad, what if, taking all your learning in, and then generating those descriptions like of what happens next. Finally, in step 3, you want to keep adding details. And this is really important from a sensory perspective. And this is what I took out of Rob Hopkins' book that I really like, that really was about using imagination. Like, put yourself in that experience. So your students are talking to Spanish speakers, let's say. You've convened a panel of Spanish speakers and they're talking maybe at small tables. Maybe you have gone to the employer to visit them and you have a little career connection there, which is kind of cool, and a little add-on. But your purpose is to raise awareness about the holidays of these employees, the holidays that they celebrate. It's a big thing in the Spanish curriculum, so you have your academic content there. So really experience that moment that they're talking and they're interacting, talking about the holidays that they celebrate, and perhaps if they were born in another country, could they talk about that and where they're from, and what does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like for you, for your students, for the Spanish speakers at this imagined employer? And really lean into those senses to create some sensory details in your description, so you can build on to what you already have. So that's it. That's the protocol, and leaning into our imagination and creativity to create additional ideas, to really push our thinking in a way that will generate details that help then you build that plan, use what you've learned in the service learning planning model to add more ideas, and to really take this all the way to the point where you're ready to draft that plan for Serve Ohio, certainly, and implement it. So that's the walk of what if. I hope it works for you, and look forward to seeing your eventual ideas that may come out of this.